Hi, I'm Guy Lawrence, and you are listening to the Guy Lawrence podcast. If you're enjoying this content and you want to find out more and join me and come further down the rabbit hole, make sure you head back to guylawrence.com.au. Awesome, guys. Enjoy the show. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. What a treat to be here.
It's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to delving into today's topics, which I no doubt are going to be awesome. Now, I ask everyone on the show when they first come on, if you were on the street and a complete stranger came up to you and asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
That changes actually. Every time somebody asks me, it changes because I'm a little unusual, but I'm okay with it. I think I'm a bit, I'm adapting all the time. So I'm changing all the time. So I used to tell people that I teach people to speak in public and find their voice. And I did that for about 12 years. And prior to that, I was an accountant and a real estate agent. But now I speak more around transformation and really helping people to find the truth within and master the inner game so that then everything becomes much more effortless in the outer game. And, if people on the street have an interest to ask me how, then I'll go into all of the detail of that. But, the message changes almost every year.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. And that's pretty much with every guest I have on here. They say the kind of same thing. There's this dynamic ebb and flow and shifting as we evolve and grow. But you've already triggered a question because I'm fairly new to your work and things like that. And before I get into your story, you did even mention then the truth within. Like, how important do you think that is for us as human beings to be our best self? Because I found on my journey, there was even a element of, I thought I was living my truth.
Everybody does. Yeah.
But I wasn't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, as far as answering the question about how important it is, that's a very individual question because it's only important if it's important. At the end of the day, we're all going to land up in a box, right? So it's only important to those that it's important to. And I don't think that importance, and I'm going to get very out there because I feel like I probably can with you guys, Absolutely. So thanks for that. Normally I kind of lead up to this, but I'm just going to go bang.
The listeners will be used to it by now, I promise.
But I think, there's a quickening that happens inside of our hearts, and it doesn't happen for everybody because it's not everybody's path here. And everybody has a different role to play in the beautiful orchestra that unfolds this great consciousness of ours. And we all have a different tune, if we like. And some of us need to be more finely tuned, and some of us can have some of the lower notes. And together we make an incredible symphony. So I think if it's important, it's important. For people like you and me, it's crucial. In fact, it's everything, and it's vital. And there is no air and there is no sunshine if we didn't pursue that inner truth and that ultimate truth that lives inside of all of us. That starts with our awareness, and that starts with our mastery of the inner game, to the extent that I understand what is going on inside of my skin bag and how much of that is conditioning and how much of that is truly me. And most of us will find that when we put our beliefs and thoughts and emotions and experiences under the flashlight, we'll see that it's all conditioning. And in fact, if we were to say how much do we truly know, well, it's that much. We don't actually know anything. We don't know what the sun is. We don't know what a cup is. I don't even know what this is. Like, who says that's a phone? And who says this is white? It's just that, we've all been conditioned to believe even our own names. My name's not Karen. It's just the name my mum chose. And then I got used to hearing it, but it's not my name. So, when we put everything under the flashlight, it all comes up wanting. Yeah. And I think there are absolutely people on this planet who must discover the truth, and that's what makes us seekers, I think. But I think there reaches a certain point in our lives where we reach so high that we realize that the constant pursuit and seeking of happiness is the very thing that keeps us from our happiness.
Oh.
And the constant pursuit and seeking for effortless self and effortless truth is the very thing that keeps us from the truth, because the truth is already always happening within us. It's just through different methodologies and different teachings that we can melt into that ultimate truth, and therefore the self disappears. And I'm totally off on a tangent, so I'm going to stop there.
I'm just
ask you some questions.
I love it. I'm smiling from year to year because it's my language. You know, everything you say, I can relate to so much from my own personal journey. And that's almost the one thing about pursuing happiness, thinking it's an outside job. And I was fortunate enough to achieve some success in certain goals that I never had in my life. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, shoot, I'm still not any more fulfilled than I was prior. And we're constantly chasing that. I'm still going off the tangent, still I'm going into your backstory yet, but which I normally start with. Yeah, no, this is beautiful. Do you then think finding our truth, like we almost need to get uncomfortable, like from your experience, before we start to look at that?
I honestly, Guy, I always used to think that there were circumstances under which a person would become interested in the truth. And so I built my seminars and my programs and wrote my books and, spent 15 years on that whole process under what are the circumstances by which a person becomes curious and begins to seek, what's the difference between me and Bill and Betty Barbecue and those ones that don't seek and me. And I even look at my beautiful husband and the greatest gift in my life, but he's not like me. He's nothing like me. So he's not a seeker. He's not interested in that. And he has a very stable, very simple life. And then there's me, hair on fire, looking for the answers to the infinite questions of life. And I guess it's kind of, balance. And I always love to think of it like this, in that it's not personal. It's just balance. And the universe has some of us taking the lead and some of us following. It has some of us seeking and some of us finding. It has some of us not seeking and it has some of us sleeping. And it has some of us awake. And I think together, like I said earlier, it makes this beautiful symphony that's very purposeful for the balance of consciousness. Now, do I know that that's true? I don't know that that's true. It makes sense, but I don't know that it's true. So I just want to say to everybody listening, don't believe a word I say. Because if you do, then it's just somebody else's opinion, right? So if you hear anything that I say and you think, yeah, wow, that sounds great, or I believe that, don't. Try it out for yourself and learn through your own personal direct experience. And if you feel through your own direct experience that it represents a level of truth, then you're in the right place.
Yeah.
I think the biggest advice I'd give to everybody is stop listening to everybody's opinions and go in and find that it's all already always been in there. We just have a better relationship with the turmoil on the surface than what we do with the stillness that's been there permanently. And it's kind of a rule, about anything that's real, is that it must be permanent. It can't be temporary.
Yes.
So thoughts are temporary, emotions are temporary, beliefs are temporary, experiences are temporary, even love can be temporary. So in order for anything to be real, it must be permanent. And so that's why I say there's very little that we actually know. And, some of the questions that you're going to ask me, I'm only going to give you my thought system on it, my opinion on it. But will it all be truth? No. It's we can't know. And I think that's where a lot of us fall down, is because we're not willing to sit in the I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's only, as you said before, do we have to go through something? I think we have to go through I don't know. And we have to be willing to sit in the I don't know. And the only gateway that we have to go through for that is the gateway of the ego, because the ego must know. The ego refuses to not know. It must know. And if it doesn't know, it'll go hunting, it'll go finding, and it'll go looking. But the truth, the ultimate truth that exists inside of us, the ultimate self, the effortless self, no, it doesn't seek. It's actually quite silent.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It was only yesterday I was listening, because I'm interviewing Anita Mojani in the morning, actually. Oh. Beautiful woman. And I was listening to her being interviewed yesterday, and she was talking about these very things. And it triggered something, because she said she was affected by an Indian guru at a young age that put her opinions on her. And that shaped her life about certain beliefs about herself that she believes have formed her illness.
Yeah, right.
From it. And she said the greatest teachers of our times are the ones that reveal the tools to allow us to look within and find the power within us and make our own choices of that free will, as opposed to, like, exactly like you said, listening to everyone else and taking their opinions and putting it as gospel. You know, it really is an inside job.
And I think, Guy, you know, everybody has their path. Everybody has their journey. I've not been somebody that's had teachers. And it's been in every area of my life, actually, in my work and my business and so on. I've had experiences, and I'm happy to share my story with you as to how I've achieved or how I've not achieved. That's really the wrong word. How I've arrived to this place. But I think that everybody has their catalysts, and some of us don't actually have a guru or a teacher to impart this knowledge. Some of us, like I said earlier, get a quickening in the heart where we say, it's not enough. It's not enough. Everything I've done, everything I've created, everything I've achieved, it still leaves me empty. It's like I'm looking for my answers in an infinitely dark room, and I'll never find them. And I think it's not until, and that's just certainly my own experience, in that it wasn't until I kind of got that looking to the world for my money, my happiness, my partner, my house, my car, my animals, all of those sorts of things. It was what everybody does. And of course, it's been a fantastic life, and I wouldn't change a thing of it. But that never brought me what I intrinsically and ultimately have searched for since I was a kid. I remember this deep longing from the age of 3, and it never was fulfilled. And then when I finally realized that all of the world was here, that was outside. The direct opposite of that is inside. So what does it look like if I look inside? Because shit, I mean, everybody says go inside, go inside. Look inside, you'll find all of your answers inside. They're all inside. Oh, crap, they're not. You know, it was just like this. Well, I don't know what's in there. What are you talking about? Where do I look? What am I supposed to do? You know, and even that in and of itself, I think that when you talk about teachers and gurus, I think that's where they come into their own, because that's where people like you, and with what you're trying to do with this podcast, that's where you kind of, you know, you give people a map of the territory. You know, they've still got to walk the path, but you give them the map of the territory that they can do it. You know, they can find their answers inside with a little bit of guidance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How much do you think your experience then with your journey and with Bali and everything sort of shaped you looking at this work from a different perspective?
Well, it's kind of like layers of an onion, Guy. So I was my partner committed suicide in 2001. We'd been together for 8 years, and he was in the movie industry. And our relationship was really struggling back then. And unfortunately, his answer was to take his life. And, you know, I'll never understand the depths of what his suffering was. I thought I knew. But all I could know was my own suffering from that. And so that put me into a spiral of suicidal depression for about 6 years. But the year after he took his life, I was suicidal, and I went to Bali to take my own life, and landed in Bali on the 12th of October 2002, which is the date of the 2002 Bali bombing. I went with two girlfriends of mine. They were both killed, and my skull was crushed on the top left-hand side of my skull. And you know, what's really interesting, as a result of those experiences, I've become a professional speaker. So I'm really excited to say that I'm Australia's most experienced speaker. So that's really a lovely title to hold. And I feel like I've only just started. And most of my work now is in the States and also in the UK. So that's really, really cool. I enjoy that a lot. But I think as time has gone by, I think the story that I tell has changed because my relationship to it has changed. See, I remember initially I was sharing my story from the context of what actually happened. You know, I jumped down this hole, I climbed up this rope and the flames burnt my back, etc. But what was really present when I look at myself as a piece of life and a piece of consciousness, what was happening for me during Bali. And I never really had the words to this because there was no one like you that I could have these conversations with and not feel like a complete fruitcake.
Yeah.
But I remember standing on the street in Bali and my head was crushed, but I didn't know. And I could feel, bear with me, I still even get nervous saying it, but I could feel the vibration of the street underneath my feet. I could feel the fish in the ocean. I could feel them in my hands. I could feel the stars in the sky with a prickly twinkle. I could feel the light of them. I could feel the roar of the ocean. I could hear the voices, the muffled voices for miles. I could feel the trees. I could feel the pain. I could feel people's pain in the tips of my fingers. And I remember standing and finding my way over to a lady who was sitting on the side of the street, and she was so badly burnt. And I sat next to her, and you know what's really bizarre is as I sat next to her, all the pain in my fingers went. And she passed away. She took her last breath and she passed away just as I sat next to her. But all the pain in my fingers went. And I thought that was just so strange. Why did the pain go when I sat with her? And then I was taken to a hospital and I sat between this fellow, and he was lying down and there was just no space. I mean, there were people everywhere. And this fellow was completely naked, but black, charred, charcoaled. And I sat down, not realizing I was actually sitting between his legs and his feet, actually. So his feet were on either side of my hips. And as I turned around to see who was behind me, he put his head up and he winked at me. And at this stage, my whole body was completely numb. My mind was so vacant. All I could remember, so strange, I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember my phone number. I couldn't remember my mum or my dad. I couldn't remember their phone numbers. But I could remember my very first boss. I go figure. I don't know. But I couldn't remember anything else. It was like I just completely left the building, 100% left the building. But there was, I could see everything, you know. I mean, I could see all the people and I could hear all of them moaning. And then they put me up on a table and they gave me 38 staples in my head without anesthetic.
Oh.
I never felt a thing, Guy. Not a thing. There was no pain. I just heard it, but I never felt it. It was just such a really unusual experience. And I think, you know, now I'm even having this conversation with you. I think that the evolution of that experience is starting to become very real for me. And about 6 years ago, I began to study Eastern philosophy and Advaita Vedanta.
Okay.
And it gave me a lot of answers that, you know, I really tried to get from A Course in Miracles, and I really tried to get from all the different ancient texts, because I really felt that modern spirituality and modern mysticism really didn't have my message. It didn't really have my answers. So I wanted to go to ancient wisdom and ancient mysticism. And I found all of my answers about this direct experience and ultimate truth. And, you know, now I see Brandon Bayes, you know, Byron Katie, Anita Morjani, you know, like Wayne Dyer. It's been prolific for years. It's just that it hasn't had a platform like it has now, you know. So I think the magnitude of this discovery of what my journey actually was, not the physicality of it, not where I ran and flames and stuff, but that sensitive feeling that I've had, it's been that's driven me to the quest. And yeah, and I don't imagine, I can't imagine who I used to be. I can't see who I used to be. And, you know, I don't have a lot of memories anymore about, you know, since I came home from Bali, because I went there suicidal, and it was really amazing, actually. I've had quite a few people say that I had a walk-in. I don't know if you know what that is. I don't really know, but it's kind of where they say that the old soul was finished and a new soul came in because the journey wasn't complete. So it kind of makes sense in the context of how I feel. Yeah. I feel 150% different to how I used to feel. My family, my sister even said to me, "Who are you? Bring my sister back. You're not my sister." I'm much nicer now, by the way. I wasn't quite as nice as I was before. So, you know, I think that there's this, I don't know, I'm rambling again, but I really think that there's this very complex web that we live amongst, and I can't guess what all of that means, because if I was to guess, I would just be creating another belief system.
Yeah, and I understand. You know, I've mentioned this on the podcast a couple of times. I've become like a raving fan of, there's a gentleman, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Joshua Mance. He just released a book recently called The Beauty of a Darker Soul. And he's a platoon leader in Afghanistan, and I think it was 2006. And he was shot by a sniper, and he flatlined for 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And they resuscitated, kept him alive, and then he came back out of that, and then went on a 10-year PTSD, depression, suicidal, and come out the other side. But there's two things that have stuck with me so much since that interview. The first one was, he said that he was grateful for the incident because it actually polarized everything that he was already holding within him. It wasn't the incident itself that kind of led him to the PTSD, which I thought was really interesting. And the second one, he said it took more courage for him to look at himself than to run into any firefight that he ever did as well. And it's just so powerful. And I raise that because it makes me think of, obviously, an incident like you've had of that magnitude. I think, you know, even though we all feel fear and we all have our own traumatic experiences and the body feels it, you know, even though the incidences can seem poles apart. What did you find from having that? How did you overcome that? From something like that and what are the lessons learned from even studying the ancient wisdom? You said like that you can look back upon that with a different relationship now. I hope those questions make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, they do, and they're great questions. So how do you get over that? Well, when my partner committed suicide, I went into my own suicidal depression, and fortunately, although unconsciously, I began studying at uni. I took up a degree in psychology, and because I wanted to understand suicide and I wanted to understand why he would do such a thing. But all it did was really help me understand myself and what I was going through, which was a real bonus, if you like. It was a real advantage to that experience. But what I don't think that a person actually gets over anything. And I think that that's kind of a bit where we, maybe as a collective, we expect that we'll get over things or we'll get past things, but we don't. We just get on with it. We don't actually get over anything. We don't actually deal with anything. I think where the problem exists for all of us, though, is we go ahead and give our experiences our own meaning. And what I mean by that was that when Greg committed suicide, I made that mean that it was my fault and I was responsible. And I was unworthy of anybody's love, affection, and attention. So I ran away from home, and I've got the most loving family. I ran away from home because I just didn't want anybody to look at me, smile at me, or be nice to me, because I didn't deserve it. So I made that mean that it was my fault and I was responsible. Then after Bali, my 2 girlfriends were killed. They came with me. We arrived on the 12th of October 2002. Greg's anniversary was the 14th of October 2002. It was his 12-month anniversary of his death. So on the 14th, I was taking my own life. I'd had planned, everything was sorted, the note was written, it was all done. And to go through all of those sorts of things, I think that the meanings that we ascribe to them either has them be completely debilitating to the context that it made me suicidal, and had the bombing not occurred, I can tell you now I wouldn't have been here.
Yeah.
And so the meanings that we ascribe to our experiences can be so destructive and so self-destructive, and we're doing that to ourselves. You know, society doesn't even have to help. You know, we do enough of that ourselves. And when I came back from Bali, the psychologist said to me, Carren, you're going to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. It's going to be natural. You're going to suffer it. Now, here's the thing, you know, the very few of us have got a bombing as a frame of reference so that we know how to handle it. And very few of us have had our husbands or partners commit suicide. So we don't know how to handle that either. And very few of us have had our 2 best friends blown up in a bomb. And you know, like, these are the sorts of things we have no frame of reference for. So really any meaning was possible. But I was handed the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. So of course I lived into that. And then I went ahead and continued to make more meaning of it, that I was the worst human being drawing breath, because not only was I responsible for my partner's death, but now I'm responsible for my 2 best friends, because they wouldn't have been in Bali had it not been for me. So now I'm a murderer. And when a person wakes up with such self-hate day after day, and it just escalates and it becomes more intense and more intense, it becomes so debilitating. And, you know, I'm very fortunate that I do have a very loving and a very gentle family that, you know, kind of got me through to the other side. And it was a story my dad told me. My dog died, Dolly. She'd been with me for 15 years and she just died of old age. And I rang my dad and I said, Father, I can't do this anymore. I can't cope with any more loss. I just can't. I'm at my end. My dad calls me Buffy. So for all of your listeners, secret squirrel. And he said to me, Buffy, he said, think of a humble little caterpillar, thinks he's awesome, going about life bulldozing over blades of grass because he thinks he's so strong. But he said, then life happens and instinct occurs and he has no say and he has no way out. He can only go through and he has to participate. That's his only requirement, is he must participate. So he spins his chrysalis, and 3 months later he begins to burst out of his chrysalis, and he says to me, you know, Buffy, no one can help that little caterpillar, that now butterfly. No one can help it, because if somebody does, they're going to cut his little wings, or his little wings won't get the strength that he'll need to be able to catch the wind. And my dad said to me, Buffy, he said, no one can help you. He said, you think the fight of your life was being blown up and handling Greg's suicide and your own post-traumatic. He said, that's not the fight of your life. He said, the fight of your life is to spread your wings and become the most beautiful butterfly because of your experiences, not in spite of them. And he said, and that's going to be the fight of your life, so that you can become beautiful for the rest of the world and also see the world from a very different perspective. He said, because before you had your belly dragging on the ground. He said, now you're going to have the wind underneath your wings. And he said, Buffy, he said, it's a fight that you're going to have to make. And he said, and Daddy can't help you. And I was 36 at the time. I was sitting on my dad's lap, and it was the best story. And I've told that story 100 times. It was a game changer, because it's all about perspective and perception. I was perceiving myself as this wounded, depressed, lifeless, worthless, unlovable skin bag. I had my belly dragging on the ground, thinking that that was life, when really the fight of my life came from my ability to become extraordinary, not just my ordinary, but my extraordinary because of my experiences. And when my dad kind of coined it in such a way, it made me face a different direction and ask different questions. And it was like, well, maybe I got given a second chance. If I got given a second chance, then what am I going to do with that? I can't sit around in a 9-to-5 job, and I can't sit around with my thumb up my bum feeling sorry for myself. I can't. That's unacceptable. I must reach for exceptional. I must reach for extraordinary, but not just once. It must become my habit. It must become my normal. And I very distinctly remember having that conversation with myself, just weeks after my dad spoke to me, and that was 6 years after the bombing.
Incredible. You said, my head's going off in multiple directions, and I wanted to try and keep this reined in, but because you mentioned the thing that resonated there for me when you mentioned we all have to participate. It's like that's the one rule for the game of life, right? That's
absolutely.
But we have the freedom of will and choice to participate of however we want to.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you? What do you think stops us from participating and playing all out?
Look, I think that if we're to look at it from a very human perspective, meaning an external view, where we look to the external for our gratification, our success, our achievement, and our awesomeness, I think if we're to look at it from that angle, I think what stops us is fear. And I'm not good enough. I think that really sits underneath the feet of every human being. Is what if I don't succeed? What if I fail? What if I look like a peanut? What if it doesn't work? What if it does work? I think that there's a lot of fear that manifests in different ways and comes from generation before ours. So I don't even necessarily think that these fears and concerns are ours. I think they're part of the genetic conditioning and even the nature and the nurture conditioning. So I think that's when I think a person realizes, if they're willing to see, is to say that I'm trying so hard to make something of my life. I'm trying so hard to be a success. I'm trying so hard to achieve greatness. I'm trying so hard to be the best version of myself I can. But none of the things that I'm doing are working. Nothing is fulfilling me the way that I see that it should. My vision of myself, I'm not getting there. Why? And I think that's when there's an invitation for people to start to look in a different direction. Esther Hicks has a beautiful analogy. She says what we tend to do is get in our boat, turn it upstream, get our little oars out and row like hell. And we're not going anywhere, but we're always sitting in the boat saying, yeah, but I'm building strength. Yeah, but this is building my muscles, like I'm building my fortitude, and this is all, I'm grateful for this strength. What a crock. She says, put the oars in the boat, turn the boat around, because that's where your money is. That's where your joy is. That's where your happiness is. That's where your bliss is. That's where your peeps are. And it's so true. It's so true, because when we're looking to the world to satisfy us and to make us feel like we're something, when intrinsically we feel that we're nothing or we're not good enough, and therefore when we go out into the world, feeling I'm not good enough, but I'm not going to show you. I'm going to put this mask on so that everybody thinks that I'm really cool. And I'm going to be so well practiced at it so that then you'll think I'm authentic, but really underneath I'm not. And that's the way I'm going to learn how to be, because that's what everybody else does. And so then there's just this great incongruence that happens. And, I think it comes back to, there's going to be leaders in this lifetime that are going to be willing to say, don't do as I do, but I'm willing to do it first. And if you see that it's safe and you decide that you want to follow, then great.
Yeah.
But don't do as I do. I don't believe that that's leadership. It's more like I'll be the one to go first.
Yeah, I hear you. I just want to reinforce that for the people listening to the show, because I stepped down from a company, 180 Nutrition, last year after 8 years. And, our podcast had achieved over 3 million downloads. We were doing exceptionally well, but I felt I wasn't congruent with who I was becoming anymore. And I was terrified of making that step down and almost coming out, if you like, and just going, right, this is my truth. This is what I need to do. Yeah. And that actually built up over many years. And it was just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But the thing that has amazed me, Carren, was that when I announced it, I stepped down, and it's a big risk. It was a financial risk. It was everything that I did. But the support and the way people have responded to me just being now almost like 100% me, where before I knew I wasn't 100% me anymore, even though I started 100% me, it kind of drifted, just as life. And then you start to learn from these lessons and things.
Yeah.
But I'd encourage anyone that, it's so refreshing. It's like I've lifted this backpack off and I'm like, so much lighter,
And what I found to be astounding, I do a lot of business coaching, and what I found to be astounding is that when we do let go, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh gosh, I've got it coming through all areas. When we do let go, what's really quite astounding, and we do just live into our truth, what's really quite astounding is that we make more money than I ever expected. I've had more opportunities, more inspiration, more excitement, more bliss and more joy with less effort than what I've ever experienced. And I'm just devastated that I waited 48 years to bloody get here. Honestly, because I had this conversation with a coaching group I was with yesterday. I said, I'm flat out to work 4 days a week now. 4 days a month. And, it's effortless. And I've never, there's more money, there's more joy, there's more play, there's more of everything that I always thought I had to work so hard for. Is that money doesn't grow on trees and you've got to bust your ass to make money, all that sort of stuff. And wow. And that's what I say. It's like onions, layers of the onion. There's just always another layer to be revealed. There's always another belief to be
removed.
Put under the spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely. What practices or routines do you have now in your daily life to help keep you moving forward?
So excitement is a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very extroverted and I'm naturally quite high vibe. So if I'm having a bad day or I'm having a flat day, it's so obvious. And all I usually need is sleep. So but I will always spend quality time with myself first and foremost. And sometimes that's just mindfully walking along the beach, or I love going hiking through the bush. It's one of my favorite things. Meditation is really big on my agenda. And I've just been investigating this, mindfulness meditation. I think there's a new movement called heartfulness, but I think it's what mindfulness was always intended to do. They just probably gave it a different name. But there's a beautiful meditation practice that I'm exploring with at the moment, where you're anchoring your attention and your awareness into the heart, and you're placing a sensation of worship into the meditation, which actually makes it much more effortless, because through the worship and the devotion, you're not competing with thought, which is so cool. So I do that a lot, and I love my work. When I'm speaking, I'm in touch with my highest source. So oftentimes I'll be on stage, because I'm still a professional speaker, so I probably speak, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times a month as well.
Oh, wow.
So when I'm on stage, that's my chance to go, take me. And I don't remember what I've said, but I have a ball. And yeah, it's really great. I love it. So those are my things that I do for myself. And of course I have a beautiful family and an amazing partner. So.
Yeah. Well, one last question on that. Was you nervous for your first public speaking event?
Oh my God, my first 30. Yeah, so I started speaking not long after I started my psychological recovery, if you like, but because here in Australia, everybody was very keen to know about the Bali bombing story and my partner's suicide and so on. So I started sharing it. And I remember a woman came to me and she said to me, "Kaz Dals, you're not very good at this. I don't think you should keep speaking." And that was the way that she spoke. And I realized, geez, if I want to do this, I better learn how to do it properly. So I spent about, in all up, it was about $90,000 on myself. Yeah, and I traveled around. I traveled around through the States and also through Australia. Of that 90, I wasted about 40 on really bad teachers. But I figured that showed me what not to do.
Yeah.
And then I just booked myself solid with all of the networking groups. I spoke for free for the next 3 years, and I made sure that I had 90 engagements each year, so that then I would move through my nervousness really, really quickly. So after the 30, man, it was like clockwork. And then I got sick of my message, so I had to try and mix it up a bit. So yeah, now I'm at 2,978 press.
Amazing. And I only asked you that question because I was checking you out this week and I saw you public speaking. I was like, oh my God, you're phenomenal. Like, you're just up there. It's amazing. And because it's a world I'm in now. But I think what I wanted to emphasize as well is that we all get scared. We all get nervous. We all get our fears wrapped around, but we move through it. And it's that relationship and those rewards are getting beyond ourselves, whether it's public speaking or whatever it is, you know. And I always encourage people to, you know, lean into that and see what happens. You know,
keep moving, don't stop. My dad always used to say to me, whenever you're in hell, for God's sake, don't stop. You know, and doesn't that make sense? As soon as we start going through hell, we'll usually stop, but you're right in the fire. So just keep moving and you'll find that on the other side of the fire, it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely. That's awesome, Carren. Look, I've got a couple of questions I ask everyone on the show to wrap up. One is, what does your morning routine look like?
Okay, so I'll usually go to the gym. So I do F45, or if I'm feeling like that's a bit too much, I'll do yoga. And then I will meditate, and then I will make my breakfast. It's usually a smoothie. I'm vegan. So I'll have a smoothie with lots of vegetables and lots of fruit in it. And then I'll sit and smooch my puppy and get my day started.
There you go. Beautiful. Yeah. I'm always curious how people start their days. If you could have dinner or lunch with anyone in the world from any time frame, past or present.
Oh, yes.
Who would it be and why?
Nelson Mandela, for sure. Okay. Absolutely. So I'm originally from South Africa. So for me, I have a very soft spot for him. I admire the man's courage, his endless grace and absolute self-assurance. Regardless of other people's opinions, he was unshakable. And that I find so compelling and so amazing. And I'd love to have dinner with him.
Amazing. You're not the first person to say Nelson on the show. What's one thing about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
Well, I am learning to fly helicopters. My dad's a pilot, and I think I've followed in his footsteps in a lot of my direction. So he's a journalist. I became a journalist. He's a business person. So I've done lots of things that he's done, and flying and helicopters for me in particular. Wow, bring it on! So
that's incredible.
I love it. I love it.
Gosh, yeah. Is it hard to get your head around, or is it?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's 135 hours of flying, and then it's about 6 months full-time of study. So I'm just building up my flying hours, and then when I get a chance to take 6 months out of my business, and I can afford to do that, then I'll go and do the final part of the training.
Amazing. Amazing. That is amazing. Cool. Yeah, that's very cool. Well done. Wow. And the last thing, is there after everything we've covered today, is there anything you'd like to leave for our listeners to ponder on?
I probably would say that when it comes to, and take this for whatever it's worth, but when it comes to our highest self communicating with us, to distinguish the difference between what's the highest self and what's the usual ego, or, what we're used to, the internal dialogue. One comes with excitement and a little bit of trepidation of, oh, can I do that? Oh my God, can I really do that? I'm not sure. So it comes with this. It comes with a sense of elation and lightness, The other one usually comes with a sense of obligation and heaviness. So if you're wanting to distinguish between how do you know the difference between the universe communicating to you and your conditioning communicating to you, that's the difference. One is always going to push you outside of what you already know, and the other one is going to keep you using what you already know. But when it comes to challenge and growth and expansion, it makes sense that the universe would not give you challenges so that you can keep using what you already know. That doesn't make sense. The universe sends us challenges and opportunities to have us expand outside of what we already know. So the next time you feel a challenge or an opportunity come your way, take it as an invitation to expand outside of what you already know. And instead of looking outside at books, courses, teachers, and videos, go inside and say, how do I think I should deal with this? And be willing and prepared to act on at least one of your own personal suggestions so that you can start to build trust with the self.
Love it. Amen to that. Ain't that the truth? For everyone listening to this that we want to connect, follow you, whatever, where's the best place we can send them to, Carren?
Head on straight over to my website at allthews.carrensmith.com, and it's CARRENSMITH.com, and you can subscribe to my magazine there called Effortless. And in that magazine, we have lots of fantastic articles. We have amazing cover stories, lots of stories that come in there from me, and then lots of personal interest and lifestyle stuff in there as well. So it's a really great read. So subscribe to the magazine. It's completely free, and it's a way to keep in touch with everything that I'm doing. In that magazine, I also publish all of my events where I'm going to be speaking, where they can come and hang out with me. I've got a couple of events coming up in September. So yeah, check it out. Subscribe to the magazine and you'll get everything there that you need.
Beautiful. And I will add as well, I've got your book right here.
Oh, yay!
My wife Linda came home, must have been about 18 months ago, like super excited and devoured it. And that's when you first came on my map. So there you go. Soul Survivor. Check that out too.
What a small world.
It is.
Oh, there you go. I had no idea.
There you go. Well, Carren, thank you so much for your time today. That was phenomenal. I loved that interview. That was brilliant. And I have no doubt everyone listening to this is going to be inspired and hopefully rethink a little bit about the way they might think about themselves and where they're going. So Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute treat. Thank you.
Thanks, Carren.